The third party may perform the promise if the promisee accepts the performance. When a promisee accepts the performance of the promise from a third person, he cannot afterwards enforce it against the promiser. Performance of a joint performance. Performance of a joint promise. I beg your pardon. In a joint promise, two or more persons enter into a joint agreement with one or more persons. The rules regarding the demand of performance and performance of contract are as follow. Demand for performance. The rules for the demand of the performance are as under. Number one, promisee. When a promise is made with several persons jointly, then in absence of any agreement to the contrary, all the promisees can jointly demand the performance, and a single promisee cannot demand the performance. Legal representatives. In case of death of any promisee, the legal representatives and surviving promisees can jointly demand performance. When all promisees are dead, the legal representatives of all can jointly demand performance. Performance of contract. The rules regarding performance of contracts are all promisers. When two or more persons make a joint promise, all such persons must jointly fulfill the promise, unless a contrary intention appears from the contract. Where one of the joint promisers dies, his legal representatives must fulfill promise jointly with the remaining promisers. On death of all promisers, the legal representatives of all must jointly fulfill the promise. Any one of the promisers. In the absence of any express agreement to the contrary, the promisee can compel any one or more of the joint promisers to perform the promise. Since the liability of the joint promisers is joint and several, the promisee can recover amount from all or any one or more of them. Demand of contribution. If one of the joint promisers is compelled to perform the whole contract, he can recover contribution from the other joint promisers equally unless a contract intention appears from the contract. Default in contribution. If any one of the joint promisers make default in making contribution, if any, the remaining joint promisers must bear the loss arising out of such default in equal shares. Release of promiser. In case of a joint promise, if one of the joint promisers is released from his liability by the promisee, his liability to the promisee ceases, but his liability to the other promisers to contribute does not cease. Assignment of contract. An assignment means transfer. Assignment of contract means transfer of rights and liabilities to a third party. It may occur, firstly, act of the parties, secondly, operation of law. So we can talk about act of parties and contractual liabilities as we go along with it.